And so we have with us today an esteemed group of people. So for our first segment, they will talk about exploring how walkable designs support safe and resilient businesses. And first we have with us Mark Fenton, and he is a nationally recognized public health planning and transportation consultant. He's also an adjunct associate professor at Tufts University, a staunch advocate for active transportation, and he's also the former host of America's Walking on PBS. As an advisor to the Walkability Institute, he has provided guidance, insight, and his years of experience helping grow walkable communities. And just a fun fact, he studied engineering and biomechanics at MIT. He has a bachelor's and master's degree from there, and the US Olympic Training Center. And today, Mark will discuss walkable designs and economic energy. We'll also have with us Dr. Linnea Fredericks. She is the acting director of the US Virgin Islands Department of Health, and she's a territorial director at the Division of Chronic Disease and Prevention there in the department. She provides resources and information to make it easier for people to make healthy choices in their living. And so chronic diseases are conditions that last 1 year or more and can cause ongoing medical attention or limit daily activities. And in her expertise and her support and the work she does with the department, she helps the community make better decisions about their health and their living. And she's going to discuss active living and the Walkability Institute. And finally, we have Peter Gajewski, who is the design program manager with the US Virgin Islands Department of Public Works, which includes issuing mandates that deal with planning and supervision of construction, as well as repair and maintenance of all government buildings, grounds, and public roads. He is a staunch advocate and resource for public works transportation in the territories, and he makes recommendations to the government, including the governor, on maintenance and other issues related to transportation and construction. And he's going to discuss demonstration projects. But we will begin with Linnea, who again will be talking about active living and the Walkability Institute. So Linnea, welcome and take it away.
And good morning, and I bring you greetings on behalf of the Department of Health, the Division of Chronic Disease and Prevention. And I'm just going to begin with, as Cassie mentioned, background information on the Walkability Institute and how that came about. So I'm going to take it back a year before the Institute. So back in 2016, the Department of Health requested assistance from the CDC to conduct a walk audit in the USVI. And this audit was conducted on the 3 main islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. And we pretty much wanted to assess pedestrian safety and access of the external environment. So things that we looked at included the availability of like walkable destinations, how much bus stops were present, and those that had shelters, if there was adequate lighting to produce and to encourage walking, the availability of sidewalks, crosswalks, and other pedestrian signalizations like the push buttons at crosswalks. So as a result of this analysis, it was disclosed that there are many limitations in the availability of these safety features in the territory. And if you live here, you know that's not surprising. And looking at the pictures on the screen, this just depicts some of what the walk audit disclosed. So you see persons are bicycling, people just walking across the street randomly, lack of sidewalks and such. So the people are interested in doing these types of activities, but we just, at the Department of Health and Public Works and other government sectors, need to find ways to make it safe for them, which would promote their use and physical activity. Next slide. So on a positive note, the walk audit results, it presented an opportunity. So we reached out again to the CDC for assistance, and that's how the Walkability Institute was born, and we convened for the first time in 2017 on St. Croix. And the image that you're seeing on the screen is when we did the walk audit at the Sunny Isle Shopping Center. So the group of persons who were there at the Institute, we actually got up and got involved at Mark's direction. We got involved in a walk audit. So this institute involved persons from multiple sectors of the government. So we had Department of Health, along with our CDC partners, Department of Public Works, Sports, Parks and Recreation, Planning and Natural Resources, Department of Tourism. So we kind of included everyone who has a vested interest in doing this type of work and who can give guidance and support in improving walkability in the territory. And today, the Institute continues to meet regularly. So we meet to discuss ways and ideas and things that we can do, like low-cost solutions that we can do to make an impact. Next slide. So within my division, the Division of Chronic Disease, our main goal is to promote, one of our main goals is to promote physical activity as a measure to reduce the risk and burden of chronic diseases. And we know physical activity has been proven very instrumental in the overall health and well-being of individuals. It is recommended as per physical activity guidelines that adults get at least 30 minutes of physical activity a day, and youth engage in 60 minutes of physical activity a day. Next slide. However, most people will not meeting these physical activity guidelines. We spend a lot of time engaging in sedentary behaviors, such as watching television. We sit at our desk all day at work, and then we drive everywhere. And this is practically because this behavior has been normalized in the community, and then also the infrastructure, the built infrastructure is designed for us to drive as opposed to get up and walk to destinations. Next slide. This slide just shows a graph of pretty much what I just said, that this is the data that shows that a large percentage of Americans are not meeting the physical activity guidelines. So you see the age between ages 6 to 11, they meet it the most, but they still only meet a fraction of that guideline. And as persons get older, that even diminishes. So at the Department of Health, we really just want to find ways, and we've been reaching out to different organizations to collaborate with us and just improving the overall health of the territory. And walkability, we know, is one way, just one way that we can get this conversation started, get people up and moving, and then pretty much just improve our overall health here in the territory. So Mark is going to take it over now.
Thank you so much, Lena, for that setup. I think it's wonderful for everybody to understand how the Department of Health really took the lead on this, but now has built an interdisciplinary team to continue to work. I actually work with the Centers for Disease Control all over the US and the territories, and I've been really privileged to be in touch with this team now for several years. It's been a delight. And one of the questions that's often asked when we start this conversation is, does the built environment, as Lena asserted, really make that much difference? And the answer is yes. We know that, in fact, 4 attributes have a huge difference on whether people choose to walk and bicycle and take transit or not. And it's the mix of destinations, the availability of a network for them to walk and bike safely, places that are inviting by their design, and safety and access for all users. It's really important we think of people of all ages and abilities, people with disabilities. It's got to accommodate everybody. Interestingly enough, we gathered over our time photos of places that do all of this, that have what a planner would call a mix of land uses, destinations close to homes, your essential services within walking distance. There are places where you have explored the network. There are some interesting places where you've built walkable spots. That bypass on St. Croix is notable because it has a beautiful sidewalk on it and a wide shoulder where a bicycle could ride. And notably, people will go out of their way to go to walk there because it is so inviting. I show a picture from Kauai, another island community where they've built a path along the shore. It's become very, very desirable. People will, again, go out of their way, but also commuters use it to get to work by bicycle. The details of your destination also matter, whether it's a big giant parking lot or whether the buildings are up at the street. And these features, we've got both kinds in the territory, right? Places that are very pedestrian friendly and places that are very car friendly. But we know what it takes, bringing buildings to the street and having street trees and awnings and benches and building the furnishings that invite the pedestrian, the bicyclist to be there, a bike rack to park your bicycle when you get to a destination. And I will say that people like Peter in the Public Works Department, engineers all over the country actually are recognizing there are many, many good tools to slow down and calm traffic and create environments where pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars can coexist safely. And you have some examples here already, things like high visibility crosswalks, this little mini circle roundabout slows down traffic in a neighborhood in St. Thomas. And there are many more tools that you could use as you continue to do this work. I will remind you that the CDC, this is a national initiative. You do not stand alone. These are challenges that we see across the country, and they actually refer to one of their primary goals in their national initiative, which they call Active People, Healthy Nation, is activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. So to be clear, it's not just about convincing people to exercise. It's just making it easy for kids to walk to school and you or I to walk to the store when we're shopping or to get to work on foot or by bike. The good news is there's a growing body of evidence that there are economic benefits of creating these more walk and bike and transit-friendly settings. First of all, we know, as Linya alluded to, a more physically active population will be healthier, and in the long term, they're going to be more resistant to chronic disease. But during the pandemic, we've also learned to infectious disease. We know people who are physically fit and don't have comorbidities like overweight, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, have responded better even if they've gotten COVID. So being physically active seems to be beneficial both with regard to chronic and infectious disease. And in the long run, it will cost our healthcare system less. But we also know there are environmental health benefits, improved air quality, lower greenhouse gases, and less global warming effect. On the micro scale, you get a lot of warming just from giant parking lots, right? That acts like a heat island. So reducing parking lots, because you have more people walking and bicycling, can reduce stormwater runoff and local flooding and reduce that heat island impact. So there are many, many health and economic health benefits. We also know that in general, walkable districts tend to be more economically vibrant. And if you think about, for example, some of the places that tourists are more like, visitors are most likely to frequent, they are some of your most walkable hamlets, right? They're the areas where there's that mix of being able to live, where you stay as close to where you go out to eat, where you shop, sightseeing, all of those kinds of things. But I believe strongly that it is not just for visitors, that these economic benefits really accrue for residents. If you make it easy for a household to not have to own 2 or 3 cars, that some people can walk to work or to school, can ride a bike for errands. The number of people I saw who were clearly doing errands on foot, people with bags or knapsacks or things, so many of the pictures we took over our time indicated people would like to be able to navigate on foot for functional, not just exercise, or leisure, but for functional trips. Very, very important. And I would submit that one of the most important things that's ongoing a discussion in the territory is around what's called the Complete Streets Policy. That is a policy that at its simplest level says, look, every road should be designed for every user, pedestrians, bicyclists, transit, and motor vehicles. And you have a couple of senators who really took the lead in getting a complete streets policy through the legislature. Unfortunately, it was vetoed by the governor because of concerns about cost. But importantly, we have to recognize some of the best complete streets exercises can be carried out when other work is happening anyway, when we're repaving a road, when we're rebuilding after erosion or flooding. And so we would make the case that a complete streets policy does not necessarily have to cost dramatically more if we do what's called routine accommodation. And to help prove that, we actually, the group during the Institute, Linya, Peter, and all the others that were there, actually designed several demonstration projects to show what more complete streets would look like. And one was right where we did our walk on it, as Linya had talked about before. At Sunny Isle, you see a lot of pedestrians at that shopping area, and they're crossing the street sort of all over the place. And so it was recommended to create a crosswalk that might get pedestrians to all cross at one place so drivers could expect to see them. Maybe it would slow traffic a little bit. And indeed, this shows where a lot of pedestrians, I think that's the picture of where the young man was standing a moment ago, they often are crossing up here, and we'd love to get them away from that blind turn near the entrance here. So the long and the short is that crosswalk was created, and then before it was put in place and then after, we measured things like vehicle speeds, where did pedestrians cross, whether vehicles were yielding for them, and notably, only 3 weeks after it was installed, only about 16% of pedestrians were using the crosswalk, but a year later it was closer to 60%. And vehicle speeds had dropped pretty dramatically, almost 25% reduction in the speed. Unfortunately, drivers were not necessarily always yielding for the pedestrians. 70 to 80% of pedestrians had to wait for a car to pass. So the point is, collecting that kind of data helps us understand how to do even more, if it's necessary, to make these kinds of projects effective. I'm going to actually take a breath here because I'm sure many of you are thinking I haven't taken one yet. I talk so fast. I'm sorry, I get excited about this. And I'm going to ask if our friend and colleague Peter Gajewski might share a bit about the other really cool demonstration that happened over on St. Thomas. Peter, are you in a position to unmute and just tell the quick story here?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Yeah. So this is a location on St. Thomas, near the right adjacent to the hospital, and as well as a medical and commercial district, where we, through the Walkability Institute, we recognize this area as an area, that has potential to be enhanced to provide more a more walkable area. So the path that is shown on there takes you from the hospital to the medical office building across the street. Before the demonstration project, there was no pedestrian facility there. There was just a pedestrian bridge, no crosswalks, no signage, and it was dangerous and really did not promote or invite walking, although there were a lot of individuals using this. So through our demonstration with low-cost methods, we were able to install a conventional crosswalk, as well as footprints showing the path across the bridge, and signage to, and also as well as there was an existing project in the area to make some drainage improvements to the waterway below that the bridge crosses, and they were also able to smoothen out the step transition and provide a ramp to make it more accessible. Also, we were able to install signage as well to alert motorists of the crosswalk, just making it more visible, safe, and inviting to walk. And so now we have a path that can take pedestrians from the hospital to the buildings across the street. And this was all done through community involvement and through a group of volunteers, through First Resort Painting, which volunteered their time, and we were able to install this. And this is being used by a lot of individuals as well. And just as Mark had mentioned with the Sunny Isle Shopping Center, we took some, we did a survey and took some measurements and observations kind of to record the behavior of motorists and pedestrians as we were installing this installation.
So it'll be great to be able to analyze that and see if we see a similar positive effect. But I would say anecdotally, we certainly think that visibility and safety pedestrians is really greatly enhanced by the work that DPW helped coordinate there. It was really terrific. I'll just mention one other. I think Alma Wingfield with the VI Trails group is on, and they have been instrumental in advocating for and working, by the way, with AARP. I want to recognize them as a great partner on this project to enhance the bicycle friendliness of the Christiansted bypass. I mentioned before the Great Walkway here, but there are locations where either there's enough width in the shoulder that a bike lane could be marked, or quite probably a shared use arrow will be placed. That work continues to be underway, but it's another great example of how different partners, in this case VI Trails and AARP, are being instrumental in trying to help advance the walkability and bikeability of the community. And I'll just leave on this note that, sort of going forward, people might be asking, well, what next? I would simply say that I think there's a lot of opportunity for more low-cost solutions. Peter and I have talked about this. This is a typical, in a previous webinar, we invited people to submit examples of challenging areas for walking and bicycling. And Charu Ross sort of suggested, you know, we've got a lot of rural roads like this. We're probably not going to be able to just stick a sidewalk along the edge of this. You know, it's a rural road. It doesn't have that much traffic, and that's absolutely right. But it might be a road where something simple like painting a pedestrian lane or what's called advisory shoulders. These are both recommendations that come from a federal highways design guide manual called the Small Town and Rural Multimodal Networks Guide. It's the kind of guide, by the way, that many communities, when they adopt complete streets policies, adopt this design guidance as well. And this might be appropriate for some of those roads that are less heavily traveled, smaller, not lots of traffic, but where you'd like to define a space for bicyclists and pedestrians, and also not a super costly treatment. So I just wanted to paint that picture. Is there more possible? Yes, I think that there is. And I think there are lots of opportunities to connect, for example, to businesses, to residential areas using a variety of tools. And I think you've only just started to scratch the surface. So with that, I'm going to thank you for your attention, and sort of hopefully that sets a context about some of the work of the Institute and sets us up for the next piece of our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Linnea, Mark, and Peter, for sharing such great insights about the Institute, the purpose, some of the benefits of having walkable communities, and some cost-effective ways that, that communities can incorporate some of these strategies. And so before we move into segment 2, we're actually going to be taking questions in a moment. So if you have any questions, either put them in the Q&A or the chat box, and Desiree is going to lead that portion for us. But before we do, we want to ask our participants a few questions. So I'm going to launch the poll, and if you wouldn't mind telling us if you are a business owner, small business, or you operate an organization, an institution, tell us how many years you've been in business or of service. Does your organization have a wellness program in place? And have you started using innovation, not solely tech, but partnerships, other services or products, et cetera, community partnerships during COVID-19? So we're going to give you a second to do that. And once you do, I'm going to turn it over to Desiree to guide us through some questions. So again, if you have questions, put them in the chat or the Q&A. So we see results are coming in. We have a few more seconds for you to go ahead and put your answers in. I would love to share with you that so far we have about half of you with 5 to 9 years in business. We're going to go ahead and give you one more second, and we're going to end the poll and collect the results. Okay. So, alrighty. So we have the vast majority of folks who've been in business either more than 15 years or the 5 to 9 years. So that's great. So in the last segment, when we do the TED Talk style round robin, we're going to zero in on that. And awesome to see that 67% have a wellness program in place. Yay! And also great that most of you are using innovation. So we'll talk through some of that. We'll talk through some of that as we progress. So now I'm going to turn it over to Desiree if we have any questions in the chat or Q&A for the panelists.
Hi, Cassie. There are no questions at this time.
Okay. All right, so we will keep the momentum going. So we talked about walkability, looking at some of the ways to incorporate some of these changes. And now, you know, it's so important that we're able to provide resources to businesses, again, especially during COVID-19 with some of the challenges. And we are delighted to have 2 guests with us today with Safety in Paradise at the UVICELL at the University of the Virgin Islands. So we're happy that they're sharing their expertise and have partnered with us. And I'd like to take a moment, if you will, to introduce them. And so we have with us today Maricel Flores Diaz, and she is the Safety and Health Specialist and Trainer for the USVI 21D OSHA Consultation Program, serving Virgin Islands private sector clients. A graduate of the University of Puerto Rico, She has led engineering projects for companies in Puerto Rico, which is where she's from, and abroad for more than 20 years. In her current role, she provides OSHA consultation services, and she's been there since 2016, and assists clients with safety inspections. She advises them on techniques for mitigating safety issues, health risks in the workplace. She's a strong believer in helping the community, especially during times of great need, like the hurricane season, and of course, what we're going through with COVID-19. And so we're happy to have her with us. And we also have from Safety in Paradise, Patricia Williams Anderson, who has more than 25 years of experience working in safety and health. She actually started her career in the Virgin Islands Department of Labor in the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, where she has performed more than 500 safety and health enforcement inspections. So she doesn't play, both in the private and public sectors. And she has a degree in business administration and has conducted training or participated in training from the OSHA Training Institute, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to name a few. And so we're so delighted to have Maricel and Patricia with us. Patricia is going to begin with her presentation, and then immediately following, Maricel will share with you. So ladies, welcome. And Patricia, you can go ahead and share your presentation. Thank you.
Oops. 1 second, please.
Sure.
Okay, hi, good morning. My aim is to bring an awareness of OSHA's working surfaces requirements and give you an overview of the applicable subpart within the standard. Businesses have an important role as economic stakeholders to implement good health and safety management systems. OSHA refers to as SHIMs. SHIMs are implemented through a hierarchy of control measures. They are engineering controls, administrative controls, personal protective equipment, which, when used in that order of prioritization, can be effective with eliminating and minimizing workplace hazards. SHIMS allows businesses to develop best workplace practices and which have direct impact to 2 important business resources critical to its success: human resources and revenue. One vital element of SHIM is workplace health and safety assessments and job safety analysis. So you might be wondering, well, how does workplace health and safety tie into the Walkability Institute's goal? It's simple. They both require surfaces that are free from recognizable hazards to allow the opportunity for others to thrive. What are the potential hazards in this picture? They are environmental uncleanliness and uneven surfaces. The most effective way to address uneven surface hazards would be to eliminate through engineering controls by resurfacing the brick layer path to make the surface even. If this path is located on the way to a business or on the property of a business, its condition is relevant to employees' safety. Subpart D, walking working surfaces, is covered in 1910, 21 through 30. The scope and definitions, which includes scope and definitions, general requirements for all working surfaces, with a few exceptions. The designs of ladders, step bolts, stairways, dock boards, scaffolds, the duty to fall protection, just a few contained within this section. 21, the scope and definition includes a description of the standard's applicability and provides the terms used within this section for clarity. I would like to just bring attention to one of the terms, and that is of walking working surfaces, which is defined as any horizontal or vertical surface on or through which an employee walks, works, or gain access to a work area or workplace location. Section 22 covers the foundation of surfaces. In surface conditions, such as, and is applied to surface conditions in passageways, storerooms, service rooms, and walk areas, and they're required to be kept clean, orderly, and sanitary. Some good management systems to ensure this is practiced will be regular cleaning regimens that is addressing frequency. Walking surfaces should be able to support its maximum intended surface load. They're required to ensure each employee's use a safe means of access and egress from the walking working surfaces. Surfaces are required to be inspected regularly as necessary to maintain it in a safe and sanitary condition. Section 23 applies to ladders. And I'll just briefly go over that area. It speaks to all ladders covered in this section, except ladders used by emergency operations such as firefighting, rescue, and tactical enforcement operations. It speaks to the ladder rungs required to be uniformly placed. Wooden ladders should not be painted to obscure structural defects. Metal ladders made with corrosion-resistant material, ladders with structural or any other defects must be immediately removed. So we're going into the section 24, step boats and manhole. This speaks to boats, rounds attached along the structures used for foot placement and hand holding are required to be designed, constructed, and maintained to prevent employees' foot from slipping off the edge. They should be uniformly placed and capable of withstanding or supporting a maximum intended load. Manhole rounds shall be corrugated, dimpled, or other type of surface that minimizes slipping. 1910-25 speaks to stairways. Stairways includes standard, spiral, ship, and alternating thread type stairs. OSHA requires each stairway with at least three threads, 4 risers to be equipped with hand railings. Standards stair specifications are covered also within this section, and they speak to the angles of each stair, the riser's height, and the thread's depth, which are to be uniformly at 9.5 inches. Spiral stairs, ship stairs, and alternating thread type stairs all have specifications as it speaks to threads, size, spacing, dimension, for which I would not go into at this time. Table D1 gives the requirements of the stairways, rise and thread dimensions. The treads is the actual stair, and the risers is the space between the stair. 1910-26 and 27 speaks to dock boards and scaffold and rope descent systems. Dock boards are required to be designed, constructed, and maintained to prevent slippage from edges of vehicles. They require to be anchored and placed, or equipment placed, so that it prevents the movement. Scaffolds are referred to in the specific standard contained in 1926, which is the construction standard, a vertical standard that has all the specific requirements for scaffolds. Oops. Okay, let's go back here. Subpart 28 covers the duty to have fall protection and protection from falling objects. This section requires employers to provide protection for each employee exposed to falls and falling objects, by performing pre-work and post-work inspections, investigations, or assessments, also referred to as job safety analysis. Protection from falling objects requires the use of head protection, such as hard hat, or engineering protection systems, such as tow bolts, canopy structures, or barricading, which prohibits the access to the area. 1910-29, again, it covers fall protection and fall objects protection, requires pre-work and post-work safety analysis, and focuses more on the details of fall arrest systems such as guardrail system, handrails, systems, safety nets, and fall arrest systems. Cages, wells are required to be continuous throughout the length of the fixed ladder, except for access, egress, and other transfer points. Safety nets are used to designate walking, working areas, or as a potential fall hazard safety protection for falls of 30 or more above ground level. The ladder step system requires employees to climb up and down using both hand connection, and personal fall protection includes body belts, harnesses, and other components. And the last section contained in this area is the requirement to have training. And training is required to be done by qualified persons who OSHA defines as possession of a recognized degree, certification, professional standing, or one who has extensive knowledge and training and can identify the potential nature of hazards and procedures to follow up to minimize the hazards. Training is done, of course, on initial assignment of the duty, and when an employee performs in a manner that dictates that training is necessary or retraining is necessary. This concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it over to Maricel.
And Maricel, before you begin, and thank you, Patricia, for all that wonderful information on how businesses can have safe workplaces, including the areas around and outside their places of business. But before we move over to Maricel, I actually am launching the poll for workplace safety. And so if you wouldn't mind answering questions about your knowledge of risk identification and some other questions related to workplace safety. And so while the poll is open and you're answering, we're also going to ask if anyone has any questions for Patricia, if you would put them in the chat or the Q&A, and Desiree will lead us with that. So if you have any questions, let Desiree know, and please go ahead and answer the poll questions. So we'll give you another few seconds before we close the poll. And Desiree, prepare for any questions we may have in the queue. Okay, 5 more seconds to answer. And we will end the poll right now. And so we're going to share the results. So for the level of risk identification knowledge, 50% of the respondents said no knowledge and 50% said expert level. Quite interesting. And Maricel, can't wait to hear from you on advisement on how to inform yourself of knowing about risk reduction. I'm sorry, risk identification. And so Desiree, we'll toss it over to you for questions before we segue into Maricel's presentation. Thank you.
Hi, Cassie. As of now, there's no questions.
Okay, very good. So Maricel, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Let me start sharing. So we have been listening all panelists speak about walkability and business resilience. So I want to start by asking you if you have an idea of what are the key elements in terms of business resilience and how do we define business resilience. So we know that this is a wide used term in business, but it has very specific key elements, and one is crisis management and business continuity, but also the ability for the organization to rapidly adapt and respond to all type of risk. So that's the reason why I was asking everyone if you have any knowledge on how to identify risk, because if you identify your risk, then you will have the ability to do some control and planning. And of course, it will give you the opportunity to rapidly adapt and respond to that type of risk. So, but we need to start by identifying those risks. And this is something that most probably is not that easy for people that have not done this before, or because we get used to see certain things in every day and we really don't see the risk that it involves. So I also ask if you know, as a business owner, what will be the cost for your business if you don't have a safety and health management system. And this includes not only the business continuity, but also if something happens in terms of an injury. And we usually think about the direct cost of a claim or the direct cost of an injury, but there are many other indirect costs that most probably we are not looking at them. And of course, having an injury or having someone injured from our employees, or maybe even a client, that will bring a lot of burden, financial burden into the business itself. So that's what I want you to look in terms of these indirect costs that most probably you don't know or you are not familiar with. So we have that is not only the direct cost of the injury, but also the time lost from work, because now you are missing one person or maybe more, depending on how many people got injured. But also is the efficiency. The efficiency gets affected, lost time by a supervisor if the supervisor is gonna need to fill in, training costs for the new replacement, the new worker, hiring costs for hiring somebody else, and sometimes even damage to property or equipment. If an equipment get out of service, that's an additional cost for repairing that equipment, but also the loss of production or services, damage from accidents, failure to fill orders or meet deadlines, all of these are part of the indirect cost that most probably you are not considering when somebody gets injured. But there are costs that we really cannot cannot place or cannot assign a specific financial number, like will be the human tragedy, the employee morale, the reputation. Those are things that will affect your business as well. So who pays? Who pays from an injury? Who is really the one who covers all those fees? So there, from the point of view of OSHA, this is what we know. Workers' compensation only covers 21% of the fees. The federal government usually covers around 11%, state 5%, and the insurance 30%. So about 50% of the cost is covered by the employee, and it comes from out of pocket. So this is something that everyone needs to look at, because it's not only the business, but also the employee is affected by an injury. And have you ever thought about how much a workplace injury will cost specifically to your business? How much will be the money that you will need to invest to cover for these direct or indirect costs? And we are not really including here in terms of the insurance. Business insurance is something that get impacted as well, but it's outside of the OSHA jurisdiction, so we are not really mentioning that, but it's something that you need to include as part of the fees or the things that will affect your business resilience. And something I want you to look here is the OSHA penalties. We have, Patricia has shared with you the specifications of the regulation, and the main message about showing you not only the regulation, but also the OSHA penalties is because you have to understand that the OSHA regulations, the standards, all those specifications have come to be part of a federal regulation just because they are based on research data. So there are safety and health studies that have come together to show that this is the safe way to have certain stuff. In this case, to have walking areas, walking surfaces. And if you are not in compliance with OSHA, what OSHA stands as part of the standard, then you will be in a non-compliance or in a violation. There are different types of violations. These are the ones that we are showing here, but a penalty, for example, for a serious violation that will be what we just saw before, an uneven walking surface, will be up to over $30,000 per violation. So it's only one uneven surface will be something like that. But remember that if you have more than one area that has an uneven surface, then it will be a repetition and it will double the violation fees or costs. So of course, these are the numbers for 2021, but these are adjusted yearly. So every year you will see that the penalties are going up. So that's something that for you as a small business should be a motivation for you to get in compliance. Something that can help you is to use this application or this program that OSHA developed for you as a business owner to estimate the cost of an occupational injury and illnesses. And I want you to look right now at the picture that we have here at the left. And if you see, we have the walking surface. And if we consider that these are businesses, let us say that they are, we have here 3 steps to get into the door, right? To get inside of the business. So be sure that when you have steps like these, As it was mentioned before, you only have 3 risers or 3 steps. Why? Because if you have more than 3, there's another part of the regulation that applies. So all these are the small details that most probably you are not familiar with, but it will not only be a non-compliance issue, it will also be a safety issue. Because as I said, research has been proven that if you have more than three steps, you will need a run rail. There is a specific measurements for those handrails that will work better for most people. It has to be on a specific side. So usually we use the right side when going down. It shouldn't be on the left side. So these are just small details. But let's go back to the safety PACE program. If we click here, you will see this is the OSHA website. Can everyone see it? No? Okay.
Marisol, we can't see it. However, Desiree is going to post the resources in the chat so that folks can click on. Oh, now we can see it. Now we can see
okay.
this one.
So this is just a quick example of why, how much an injury will cost to your business. Let us take, for example, what will be the most common injury if you have an uneven surface? It will be laceration. Let us say that. And this is the injury type. And by default, we use the profit margin as a 3%. So let us say we have 3 in there. And then we just calculate how much it will be. So for laceration, the direct cost, it will be over 20,000. The indirect cost will be over 24,000, making it the total cost 45,000. And this is an idea of how much additional sales your business will need to do to cover only the indirect cost and then all additional sales for covering the total cost. As you see, this is a lot of money, and if you are a small business, this will place a lot of financial burden into your business just to cover an injury that can be easily prevented. And this is the key point here. We are looking for things that can be easily prevented. So why we are going to be concerned with safety and health? Well, safety is a good business, not only because, as we have seen, is the right thing to do based on an OSHA's regulation, but also because it improves the employee morale, it protects your most valuable resource, which is your employees, but also because it provides a way to control the cost, the direct and indirect cost of your business. And also it adds value. It provides competitive advantage, it ensures business continuity, and why it will help you to add value. And if we go back to what I mentioned at the beginning about business resiliency, we mentioned already that it will be planning. So we have seen in the hurricanes that affect the territory 3 years ago, that if you have a plan on how to cover for an emergency like a hurricane, you will not have to continue your business even though whatever happened in the territory. But also, if you have a really good safety and health system and you have a plan, you will know how to deal with things like what we are going right now, like a pandemic. Because these are the kind of things that if you plan beforehand, you will know how to continue servicing the community, continue your business. So we know that safety and health excellence correlates with business excellence, meaning quality, not only quality, but also resiliency, efficiency, and profitability. Because if you can plan for having a safe place, you can plan for avoiding or correcting hazards, then you will not need to invest on injuries. So the question is where to start. Safety always starts with you. Safety always should go first. And the last question I have for you is that how can a small business with not safety or health expertise can get help to wisely invest in safety? Well, the best way to do that is to contact Safety in Paradise, which is the local private sector OSHA on-site consultation program. That means that we are part of OSHA. There are two sides of OSHA. It's OSHA enforcement and it's OSHA consultation. And the goal of Safety in Paradise is to provide small and medium-sized businesses that cannot afford to have a safety and health specialist to offer them no-cost confidential occupational safety and health services, meaning that we will help you to understand what is a risk. We will help you to build all those skills so you can identify what can be a potential risk and to plan for anything that may affect your business in terms of risk and risk analysis. So the take-home message for you today is to remember that safety pays in countless ways. So be sure that if you need help, reach out to us because we are here to serve the community and we are here to help you build all those skills in terms of risk identification. So this is our information. It will be shared with you as well in the resources that we will send. So feel free to reach out to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marisol. Great information from you and Patricia. And so we're going to give everyone a chance to post a question if you have one in the Q&A or the chat. And while we give you a moment to do that, Desiree also put in the chat some resources that Safety in Paradise shared. And so you can click on that link and visit and download some of the information in particular that Marisol shared. And as she alluded to, when we talk about next steps in a moment, you will also have resources that were shared today. So go ahead and if you have any questions, please place them in the chat or the Q&A. And Desiree, I'm going to come back to you in one moment to ask if you have any questions. Okay. So Desiree, do we have any questions or comments?
Mark submitted one, and his question is, does confidential mean that you will not turn a business over to the compliance arm of OSHA? And I guess that's directed
I can answer
to Marisol.
that. Yes, I can answer that. Yes, it means that whatever you do with OSHA consultation is not shared with compliance, but there needs to be a commitment. We are helping the business and the business is committing to do the abatement. If there is a hazard that has been identified, they need to correct that. We work with the businesses in terms of setting a schedule of activities they need to comply. They need to do the abatement in a certain time because of course everything is time. It needs to be time framed. It cannot be open. Understanding that there is a risk, is a non-compliance, and workers are at risk from the point of view of OSHA. So if a business do not do the right steps to do the abatement, to correct those hazards, of course, we give them around 90 days to do that if they don't have a plan, because there are certain specific things that may need a plan, especially if you need to repair something, it includes construction, it includes bringing workers from another company. So that's understandable. So we can work on a plan, but it has to come with a plan. If, of course, if the business is not committed to correct the hazards, sooner or later, we will need to report that, because at the end of the day, we are part of OSHA.
The other question is, what steps have the territory taken to address equal access, like walkability, on the island with Department of Public Works? Are there plans to create more sidewalks, travel paths? And that's from Elliot Wheat, W-E-T-E. I apologize if I did not pronounce the last name correctly.
This is Mark. I'm going to weigh in and say that Public Works is, as you can imagine, exceptionally busy. I just know this from my interaction with the team, with Peter, trying to catch up with, you know, reconstruction, repair efforts still from the storms and things like that, as well as, you know, growth. You guys there's a lot happening there. And so there is, I think, a real commitment as work is being done to, and Peter, I don't want to speak for you. I'm just putting this on the table as an outside observer. I can give a perspective on this. A real commitment to thinking about multimodal accommodation. Think about pedestrian and bicycle and transit accommodation in every project. Having said that, I think it's really appropriate, and that's why I mentioned the Complete Streets policy. It would give DPW, I think, a lot more leverage to do that kind of work if that Complete Streets legislation were passed, because it would also require the legislature and the governor to make sure that DPW is resourced to do that work, because it is inevitable that you're asking public works engineers and planners, and then the infrastructure, the construction teams, to have a lot of balls in the air at once, right? We're trying to get this work done. We still got to move traffic. We've got to make sure this intersection is safe for cars. We've got to, you know, do all of that at once. And if there's an official mandate that comes from at the legislative level, my experience has been with other communities around the country that have done this, it means then there's also an acknowledgement that the resources have to be provided to public works and the infrastructure builders, or if it's happening, by the way, in the private sector, and this is really relevant to the conversation with Patricia and Maricel, you know, the private sector, when they're building, you know, when new development is happening, so housing is being put up, or a business is being constructed, you know, they have obligations, for example, to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. That's just woven into the expectations. But if we don't put the resources in place to make sure they know that, to do the kind of work that Maricel was just describing, right? The consultative support to make sure that that happens early in the process. You want to do that before plans are even approved. Where's the bicycle pedestrian access? Where's the bicycle parking? How do I get from the transit stop to the front door of the building? Does all of that meet the ADA? And then, to the point that Maricel and Patricia made, once I get in the building, do I have full accommodation, right? All of that is really part of a web. And I'd really like to see greater awareness. One of the reasons for this webinar is to sort of see people, A, make this big connection, outside the building to in, through the network, around the community. All of it is connected, A, and B, therefore, commit to resourcing this work. And I would say in particular to Mr. Wheat's question, Elliot's question, DPW, it would be great for them to get that support right from the very top. So I hope that that's a perspective of sort of an outsider. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not in the legislature. I don't work for Department of Health. I don't work for DPW. So I'm just telling you what my observation is from other communities and what best practice would suggest has to happen. So I'll shut up and I'll give others a shot at that too.
I would have to agree with exactly with what Mark said, but we work closely with the territorial ADA coordinator on our projects. We take all of any complaints very seriously. ADA compliance is a regulatory requirement for all of our projects, and our projects are reviewed for ADA compliance, although we could be doing more resources, and I guess I would just leave it at that. But we do get a lot of complaints, and we do have issues, and we take it very, very seriously. But more resources could certainly be used.
Kathleen too, it says she has photographs of a possibility for a crosswalk in St. Croix. Her question is, who do I email it to? I gave her the Walkability Institute's email address, but I guess, Peter, what is usually the process when individuals have photos of, suggestions for Department of Public Works? Who do they usually send it to?
It would probably best if you can access our Facebook. We have been making an effort to use that more. And certainly by sending it to the Walkability Institute, it would get around to me, or you could send it out directly towards me. But I know that we are working on getting more public involvement through our social media, through crowdsourcing, to bring these types of issues to light. But as for now, probably the best way would be to either go through the Walkability Institute or through DPW's Facebook or website.
If I can make a plug, I would urge you to replicate anything you do through that Facebook page. And here's why. I think it'd be great for DPW to continue to hear voices other than just Peter's. Peter's been an extraordinary ally and advocate through this process. He has finite time. He's supposed to be able to sleep at night, and be with his family and things like that. So the more we can elevate this message, it's one of the reasons, again, we're partnering up with the Safety in Paradise team. Anytime we can elevate this message and make the bigger connections, right? That sort of the blend from out on the street to across the private property and in the front door of the building, it's all part of the same network. Every time we can do that, we help people see these big connections. So use that Facebook page, because that means other people at DPW, their outreach and their sort of outreach and engagement portion of the department will see it and bring it in through that pipeline too. I think it never does harm to increase the overall awareness. So I'd like to just reiterate what Peter said. If that other mechanism is available, use it. If, by the way, it's on private property and associated with the business, reach out to UVICELL because they will be another voice to advance this agenda. Let's advance this agenda through as many voices as we can. If that's okay. I mean, I hope I'm not being too pushy here, and I am pushy about this stuff, but I believe in all the benefits that UVICELL talked about and the health benefits that Lena talked about. They're all connected, right? So let's elevate the message.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, we do have a new commissioner going through the nomination process, and one of his top 3 goals was increasing public involvement, public awareness, and outreach to the community, so their voices are heard. So certainly, if you do go on our Facebook or website, it's being monitored on a very regular basis.
Thank you both for answering that question, and the participants for asking such great questions and wanting to stay connected. So we're going to switch into the last segment, which is a rather rapid fire TED Talk style. And so we're segueing from all that great information that was shared by all of the presenters and talking about 2 specific things: planning and implementation. So during the first segment, we talked about some of the pop-up demonstrations and showing crosswalks that were put into place at the hospital. I know Peter talked a lot about that, and at the Sunny Isle crosswalk as well. And so we kind of want to tailor a little bit to our audiences. So since we have so many people who are with us who have, I'll say 10+ years in business or with their organizations, I like for the panelists to talk about one thing, just one thing, and we'll go round robin, that folks can do to plan, and then we will talk about implementation. So keep in mind, we have a mix of folks who are 10+ years in business, and then the other group is more 2 to 4 years in business. So one thing that they can do to plan, and then we'll talk about one thing to implement. And so I'm going to actually start with Peter first. Then we'll go to Mark, and then Lenia. and then we'll punt it over to Patricia and Maricel. So Peter, if you wouldn't mind kicking it off.
Okay, so we're just discussing ideas for implementation and what we're doing.
For the plan, advice to the attendees for planning how they can become resilient or even build on what they've already started in terms of walkability. When we get over to safety in paradise, workplace safety as well, but you may have some thoughts on the workplace safety piece as well. So we'll talk about planning specifically.
Well, workplace safety, I mean, that's probably not my area of expertise, but as far as for generally for walkability, get involved in the project planning process. Every major project that we do, there's a public involvement element. Make your voice be heard before we build the project, while we're planning and designing. A lot of times we don't hear from people until after projects are built, and that sometimes can be too late. So get involved. If you hear a town hall meeting or a public involvement meeting for a process, please go make your voice heard. Make sure that your local representatives are aware of your desire for improving walkability. So I would say that those are the best advice that I could give you is get involved in the process through voting, through expressing your interest to elected officials, and getting out there and being involved in community planning meetings.
That's perfect, because it sets me up, because I was going to say, particularly if you're an employer, reach out to your employees and say, how do you get to work right now? Do you walk or bike, take transit? If you do, what barriers do you experience in that process? And if you don't, why not? What are the barriers that keep you from doing that? It might be I live 20 miles away or something like that, but I'll often suggest there are other barriers, like the very sidewalk that Patricia showed to open her slide. It may be that, hey, there's a lot of that on my route to work, and it's not viable for me, right? So by engaging your employees, you amplify the voice, right? It's not just you making the suggestion Peter just recommended, but you could say, look, I've got 12 employees at my place, and of them, only one walks or bikes or takes transit to work, the remainder drive, and some of them would if we could solve these barriers. So from a planning standpoint, I really like that idea of community engagement, and your employee base is the first community you could engage with, right? You could get their perspectives on that. By the way, I'm sure Maricel's going to say you can do that internally as well, right? That doesn't have to just be external to your property. You could be internal, but start to engage with them, because they've got lived experiences that are really relevant to these conversations.
Right. So I'll just continue on that note. And as far as engaging the employees, then you can even take it a step further as to link in health and wellness. And I mean, most employees, a large percentage have some type of chronic disease. So just kind of create that link from walking, promoting physical activity, whether it's changing your mode of transportation to work, and then how it can affect and impact or reduce the burden of the chronic disease that you're experiencing. So just kind of bridging that gap, that would be a good transition.
And so to spin off with the employees, make them feel comfortable with coming to you as employers, and giving ideas, allow them to participate in the process of job safety analysis. Give them that opportunity, because sometimes we don't see what they see, and job safety analysis and assessments, they're very important.
In terms of planning, I will say 3 keywords. The first one is communication, the second one is logistics, and the third one is training. And communication in the sense, as Patricia mentioned, taking a look what the employee sees. What they are seeing, not only the employees inside of the workplace, but in the surroundings, because there are things that happen outside, and sometimes employees need to go outside of the main structure and do work as well outside. So that means that work comes out as well. And then OSHA standards would apply because they are doing something that is related to work, even though that they are outside of the main structure. So extend that communication with the community. What you are doing in your surroundings, in your business that may be affecting the community as well. And then look for experts. When you don't know something, then communicate with experts as well and get their feedback. For the second word, in terms of logistics, this is planning. And planning includes a way to implement everything that you have planned, right? So this has to be done in a very specific way, so you are taking care of everything. And the last one is training. Why? Because training is what is going to give you resilience. It's going to be everyone the tools that they need to rapidly adapt and to continue the business. And during training, be sure that you are also doing some drills. What will happen if someone gets injured? What will happen if if we have a specific event, you know, out of normal situation, how you will respond? So again, 3 words: communication, logistics, and planning.
Thank you all for such great information. And to do a very quick recap, getting involved before the project begins to have a say, reach out and engage your employees to find out the barriers to walkability and probably overall healthiness. Also looking at establishing and planning for, in particular, health and wellness programs and support to employees. Patricia hit a key one: make sure that you are accessible so that your employees feel comfortable even making suggestions to you. And finally, I think Marisol just hit it out the park with getting us on task for thinking about how we're communicating and planning for that. And that includes sharing information about drills and providing training. So we talked about the planning. We're going to segue in a similar format to implementation. But before we do, I'd like to ask the participants if you would please share in the chat. And I'm asking the shy folks, people who don't normally talk, we're not going to make you share your voice audibly. However, we really would appreciate if you put in the chat suggestions based on your experiences, your businesses and organizations, for things that the Walkability Institute can consider to increase walkability, healthy living, healthy environments, and communities. So all of our panelists have spent years doing research and looking at best practices, but we can't do it on the territory without getting feedback from you. So please, before we end, put in the chat your suggestions for implementation. And having said that, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give one thing to encourage our participants to implement programs, processes, engaging people to encourage walkability. So I'm actually going to go in reverse, and we're going to start with Patricia. We'll go to Marisol, and then we'll go to Linnea, Peter, and I'm going to ask Mark if you would tie it all up for us for implementation.
Okay. So actually, one thing, I'm sorry, that employers can consider for implementation of, I'm sorry, Kizzy? You're muted?
Yes, implementation. Yes, one thing that people can do to implement.
Well, they can implement the hierarchy controls, which includes engineering, addressing the problem before you have a problem, administrative controls, developing policies and procedures, and then providing PPE to employees.
Thank you,
Yes.
Marisol. Go ahead.
For implementation, I will say that the best way will be to establish schedule activities. That will be the best one. And in those, we use a lot what is SMART goals. So each activity needs to be very specific. It has to be measurable in terms of what is the outcome, what you are expecting the outcome to be of that particular step. And then it has to be in a time frame, right? So, and of course, part of the implementation is to schedule those activities in things that you can control. Be sure that when you are implementing those things that you will be implementing in terms of, for example, setting a walking area, you are in the process of implementing that. You are not creating another hazard, either for your employees or people that are coming to your business.
I think I'm next.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. One thing I would suggest is to just have the conversation with staff, find out what their true needs are, you know, assess the temperature of the environment, see, because you as the employer may be thinking one thing, but a needs assessment is always good. And then from there, you can identify possibly a champion or someone who's really engaged to take the torch and, you know, run with whatever wellness program or safety initiative that you guys plan to implement. And of course, the Department of Health, once it comes to do with wellness and we have any expertise internally, we're always willing to support whatever is happening in the community. So definitely reach out to the Division of Chronic Disease.
Thank you. And now we'll go over to Peter and then we'll close with Mark.
My suggestion for implementation is just get out there and walk. If you're a resident or an employee, next time you have an opportunity to, you know, whether it's for lunch or for recreation or to work, if you have an opportunity, take that opportunity. If you are an employer, start a walking group. I know Public Works did that. A lot of organizations and employers in the territory are doing that. And that will kind of, I think that will just kind of create ideas and discussions regarding that. And you will see things that you have not seen before when you do actually go out there and walk.
That is why Peter is my hero right there, because he thinks that he stole mine. Get out, be a role model first, right? Get out and walk. But you know, those walks together are opportunities. They'll generate the very conversations that Maricel, Patricia, and Lena are asking us to have, right? They become safe places sometimes to have the kind of, and you become an active observer. And mine was going to be along the same line, make a simple low-cost change. If you're an employer, there are any number of simple things you can do. Install a covered bicycle rack. And I say covered because there's hot sun. It's going to melt the seat of that bike and it is rain. So cover up and put a place for employees to put a bike that's safe and covered. Or maybe put a couple of share bikes that are owned by that your employees could use at lunchtime to run an errand. If there's a safe place to ride, right? You could have a couple of shared bikes out there. Maybe it's as simple as painting a safe, defined, accessible walkway through the parking lot to your front door. You know, so many places, we haven't even, imagine just painting it and putting a couple of vertical delineators or even just cones to define an accessible route to your front door where you're not battling the cars to get through the parking lot. My only point is there is some really safe, look back at those demo projects we did. Think about how simple some of those changes were. I guarantee you have something like that you can do. So you've just gotten some great ideas. You can leave this session, and I hope you will be an emissary to your peers and make the same suggestion to them. Evangelize this message for us, right? Because there are only so many voices on this call, but you could carry this out and ask the employer, the business next door, to do the same thing.
What great suggestions. Collaboration is always key and gets things done in numbers. So thank you for your input for planning, strategies, and implementation. And so before we close out, Mark, I'm going to switch back over to you. Mark is going to lead the panel or panelists in talking through calls to action.
Sorry about the muting thing there. I'll just conclude. You really already heard such good stuff that I won't be redundant, other than to say, you're seeing our little slide, right? Cassie, that's up. Okay, good. You know, sort of give voice to this, role model it. We've already said that. Peter's already made the case. You know, get out and by your behavior, sort of suggest this. But I'll go a step further and say, in particular, you can reach out to territorial officials around pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities and general, safety for movement. And this complete streets legislation, I'll leave, my final note will be, we have to give voice to that. Let the governor know that it need not be dauntingly expensive, and that that money will be well spent, much like the case that Maricel gave us. We will be rewarded many times over for investing in safer environments for people to be out moving. So that'll be my pitch off of these final points, and I'll invite my colleagues to offer any final pitch they'd like to make as well.
So we'll open it up to anyone who wants to share.
And indeed, I'll be I'm going to admit we've kind of said most of this already, I think, during that wonderful concluding session. So I don't want to make you, beat the same drum again. But if there's any angle we miss, please don't hesitate.
I guess just one more time, I'm going to reiterate the importance of community involvement in all of the upcoming disaster-related infrastructure projects that we are having. I know I'm involved in dozens that are just getting underway now, and there will be a public involvement element in all of those designs. So just get out there and get involved.
And we have time for one final observation or call to action, if anyone wants to share. Okay, thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate you leading that, and Peter, your feedback as well. And so as we transition to ending webinar, we just want to thank you again for participating. We hope that you got lots of great information that doesn't stay with this webinar. We want you to take this information back to your communities, to your businesses, to the businesses that are adjacent to your business, and just want you to spread the word to encourage walkability. And so before we end, just a few thanks. Number one, I'd love to thank Desiree for collaborating with me today and sharing the questions and the comments in the chat and Q&A. Of course, we have to thank our wonderful presenters and our partner, Safety in Paradise at UVICELL at the University of the Virgin Islands. And we just want to let you know that this presentation is supported by a grant funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and in partnership with the Task Force for Global Health, Inc., or TEPHINET. We thank UVICELL again and Safety in Paradise for partnering with us on this webinar. And for the participants, you will receive additional resources as well as online links, and most important, a survey that we're asking you to complete. So we thank you again for participating, and we hope that you've gained lots of information that you can use now and in the future. Thank you guys again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cassie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.